Alright, and we're back for another painting tutorial, and this one on the new Auric Flamekeeper from the Fury of the Deep set, and depending on when you're watching this, I'm sure he's been released in his own blister pack as well, but for now, which is 4 days before the release day, he's only in Fury of the Deep. So we're going to get started here. I will say I primed him with Chaos Black, that's what Games Workshop spray is called. Chaos Black. And then hit him from about a 45 degree angle, like this, with Wraithbone. And then turned him like this and hit him straight up top with Wraithbone, just so we get a nice gradient of the light to black, and that will help our contrast paint we're going to use quite a bit. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to do his skin first. And I labored quite a bit with what color to do his skin. He's in an army called the Fyreslayers, if you didn't know. And, you know, there's not really a good color necessarily for the skin of Fyreslayers. But finally, after much debate and, you know, going back and forth several times, I settled on this, and, you know, we'll see how it goes. Just give this a good shake. Alright, so there's not a ton of skin on him, but there is some, so we're just gonna go slow. And we are doing a fair amount of this model in contrast paint. However, all of the metallic is going to be gold, and we're going to do that with an actual metallic paint, so we can be messy when going around those kind of details. But on stuff like the cloth, the cape, that sort of thing, we want to be careful. So just going slow and getting only his skin. And for a lot of the Fyreslayers, they have lots of skin showing, with only a little bit of armor. This guy is actually quite heavily armored, so there's not tons to paint on him. You'll notice these symbols. That does not mean that he's wearing pants or armor or something and has those symbols on it. Those symbols are branded into his skin, and so we will paint those later, but for now they can be just the color of his skin. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this color up, wait for it to dry just a little bit, and then we'll come back and do the next color. Alright, we're back, and our flesh is all nice and dry. Now we're going to move on to the fire, and it might seem like a little early to be doing the fire, but I want to see what that's going to look like, and then we can paint everything else around it. So that's going to be 4 different colors. We're going to start with the Iyanden Yellow, move to Gryph-hound Orange, then to Blood Angels Red, and then finally just a little bit of Black Templar. So we're going to do all these at once. We're going to wet blend these. I'm going to do one flame completely. I'm also going to open all 4 paints. I'm going to do one flame start to finish, and then do the next flame start to finish, and you can see how I do this. This is like the baby's first wet blending. There's nothing hard about doing it with contrast paint. You just mash the paints together and they do their thing. So here we go. So first, I'm taking the Iyanden Yellow, which will probably get used a heck of a lot more now that we have Eldar releases upcoming. And I'm just going to cover the entirety of the flame with this. All this stuff around it is going to either be gold or silver, and so if I get some of this contrast paint on it, it's not a big deal because the gold or silver will obviously cover it. So stray bristle in my flame, get that out of there. And I want to make sure to get into all the nooks and crannies in here so that if part of this, like in the eyes and whatever, is actually fire, then it'll show like that. When I go to paint the metallic, then I'll decide what's going to be fire and what's going to be metal. So now I'm not even going to clean my brush. I'm just going to go straight into the Gryph-hound Orange. And I'm going to start about here or so. And I'm just going to work it up. about there. Then I'm going to just dry my brush off on just the paper towel, and then take the yellow again and just kind of feather the orange into the yellow here. Like that. I think that looks good. Then I'm going to wipe my brush off again, not rinsing it, just wiping it off, and take the red and start a little bit higher. And go up here like this. There we go. And then wipe the brush off again. Go back into the yellow, not back into the orange. We're always going to go back into the yellow. And just feather it down a little bit. Basically, we're just trying to avoid the big straight lines of color. We don't want that. I'm just going to go back into the red a tiny bit here and darken this up. There we go. Then I am going to rinse my brush off completely for this, dry it really well, and then come into the black and just right here on the tips, and we'll put some black and just blend it out here. And it's kind of going to appear sort of a grayish reddish color, but that's what we want. We don't want it transitioning to just straight black. And then come into the other side. And then rinse the black off, and then come back to our yellow. And anywhere where there's a harsh line, we're just gonna blend it down into the fire. Alright, and there we go. Just get that bit of color up there. Alright, and we're all set. So I'm going to do that to the other one, which is right there. Then we'll let that dry completely, and then we'll come back and probably do his beard or his cape. Alright, we're back, and our flame is all nice and dry. Now we're going to move on to his hair, and for that we're going to use Gryph-hound Orange. Give it a good shake, and this is going to be for his beard, which is presumably actually attached to his face, as well as the mohawks here on his helmet, which I assume are not. All of this is going to be metallic up here, so we don't have to worry too much about coloring in the lines. The cloak here is going to be contrast, so we want to try to avoid that if we can. You always want to try to avoid other areas you're going to use contrast paint on when you're using contrast paint, but it can be not too difficult to just prime over or apply some primer with a brush and then paint over it. But with the zenithal, it can be a little harder. You have to be very careful to kind of keep your gradient going. So you just want to be extra careful if you are using a zenithal priming method. So I'm just going to get the mohawk here. It's a 3-stage mohawk, so I just want to make sure that I get both sides of all three. I'm just going to get the one side of all of them, and then flip the miniature and get all the sides of the next one. There we go. Alright, get the fronts here and the bottom, and then I'm just going to flip it. Oh, got a little bit of orange there, just wipe that off. Flip it here and just do the other side. So I'll finish this up, let this dry, make sure we got every strand of hair on every side so we don't have random primer showing through. And then I will come back and we will do the cape. Alright, we're back, and our Mohawk plus beard is mostly dry. We're going to go on to the cape now. And we're going to do this in Achelian green. Sort of as a joke, because, Achelian is the other side of this box. But also just because I think it'll be a nice color. Contrast well with the orange. And, I think it'll look cool. So this is going to be for the non-scale parts of the cape, basically. So it'll be this sort of undercloth here. I'm actually going to paint this part with this color also, but probably going to paint over it with a layer paint later. But for now, I'm just going to color it completely. That way, if I decide I'm not going to change it later, I don't have to come back and paint more with this color. It's just already done. Just make sure to get that completely covered. And get the bottom right there. There we go. And then all of this as well. And I'm just painting over the scales, being careful to avoid the skin as well as the hair. But otherwise, just mashing it in there, making sure I cover all the primer. This is while it is a great surface for contrast paint, because of how many bumps it has, you will get the surface tension wanting to pull away from some spots, and so you might get these random white flecks in a couple places where your contrast paint just didn't break surface tension properly and pulled away. If that happens, I will just cover them up with a small dot of this Achelian green. And if it happens to you, you should do the same. It can happen when there's sort of deep valleys in places, and then just the surface tension doesn't quite break all the way. But in any event, I will finish this up, make sure to get all the nooks and crannies of this cape here, and make sure to get the back of the cape as well. And then once this is dry, we'll come back, and I think this is the last contrast color, so we'll come back and start working on our layer paints. Alright, we're back with our green or blue, almost dry, not quite, but I forgot we have one more contrast color to do, and that's Gorgrunta fur. And that's going to be for the leather pouches and stuff that are on our dude here. So, I'm just gonna do that right here, and this part coming in there, just like that. I'm actually going to do it on that as well. And then I'm going to check on the other side to make sure there's nothing else over there. And then I'm also going to do the wrapping on his weapon here. Oh yes, there's quite a bit over here. Okay. We'll do this. I think this is armor right here, but I'm just going to paint it this color for now. And we can always come back and paint it metallic later. Not a problem. So just get the wrapping here. Should get all the way around. All right. So there we go. Now our contrast paint is officially done. So when we come back, we will start in on the gold and the silver. All right, we're back, and everything is nice and dry. And we're going to move on to the metallics. So to start, we're going to use the Scale 75 color black metal. Now, before anyone freaks out and says, I don't have Scale 75 paint, not a problem. This is just a stand-in for Games Workshop Iron Warriors. I still have not been able to get my hands on a pot of it. This is almost the same color. So if you only want to stick with GW paints, which I'll be honest, I usually do, then Iron Warriors is what you're looking for. Iron Hand Steel can also stand in. It's a little bit lighter, but it can stand in. But since I am unable to get a restock right now, I'm just going to use Scale 75 black metal. So, just going to squeeze a little bit of this out, and then I'm just going to go in and paint all the metal with this color. Some of the metal is obviously going to be gold, but starting with this means that our gold will have a better finish. Going over white or wraithbone with gold can sometimes lead to a very flat gold, which is not really what I'm looking for, especially on a hero. I want him to stand out and look impressive, and so flat gold doesn't really do that for us. So I'm just gonna paint in all the metal here, and that is, of course, his axe torch thing here, but also is his helmet, things on his wrists here, all this here in the front, his anklets, and then the brands that are in his skin. Can we see any others? Oh, there's one in here. There's just a tiny corner of one there, and then there's one there. Oh, and there's a corner of one there. So yeah, I'm just going to paint in all of the metal, being careful to leave the yellow in between these bits here, so we get a nice kind of smoldering embers look in there, and being careful around things we've already painted, because it is hard to cover metallic paint with contrast paint. So I'm just going to do the rest of this here, just going slow and steady, and then once I have that all done, I'll let it dry completely. We will come back and apply the gold. Alright, we're back, and our silver is dry or drying. And now we're going to move on to our gold, and that's going to be Retributor Armor. And we're going to apply this in several places, but we're also going to leave quite a bit of the silver still. So this face here is going to be the first place we're going to apply the gold. The axe blade is going to stay silver, but the face here and the cup part of this torch is going to become gold. The eyes are going to stay silver, however. And I am sort of looking at the box art for to decide where I'm putting my gold, but I'm not going to follow that exactly. As far as I know, anyway. I don't think I am. I'm gonna pick out my own spots, I think, and decide where it goes. And doing this gold over the silver, like I said, is better than doing it over the white or the wraithbone, because it gives it a better finish, but we might end up needing 2 coats of it. So we'll just have to see. Then this whole business here is going to be gold. All the way down between his fingers here. Down to here. And just make sure to get all the way around. Just like that. And I'll finish the rest of that cylinder up, but I'm also going to pick out the other face that's here. And carry the runes that sort of flow up from the head. And we'll paint them in gold. All this in here. And this. And then all this down here is going to be gold as well. That I'm going to leave silver though. His face, I'm going to do the same thing. I think I'm actually going to leave that. I'm going to leave that silver. I'm going to come in. No, I think I'm going to leave that silver too. I am going to, I think, be done there, actually, in terms of his head. What's going to be gold and what isn't. Just going to paint that in. I think we're good there on silver. We're good there. These things I'm going to do in gold. They're hanging here. He's got some more on his cape. We're going to do those. And then I think that'll be it. I'm obviously going to touch that up after I cut the camera here. I just wanted to show you everything that I was going to put gold on. Oh, and he's got a ring on each of his hands. I'll do those in gold as well. So I'll finish these cape symbols up. I'll do the cylinder, rest of the cylinder of the weapon, and then do the rings. And then we will come back and probably paint these scales. Alright, we're back, and our gold is nice and dry. I did end up doing a couple more things in gold that I'll just point out real quick. I did the runes that are in their skin in gold, because of course they have to be. And then I did these little circles here on his belt in gold as well. Otherwise, I think I mentioned everything else that I did in gold. So now we're going to move on to painting the scales. And that will be Cantor Blue. We want the scales to stand out, but we don't want them to distract from the gold and the orange, which are the main colors of these guys. So that's why we're going with a darker color, just to help kind of. They'll look cool, I think, in this darker color on the lighter background, but they won't be distracting from the main attraction of the dwarves here. So I'm just going to go through and get all these scales individually. It will take a little while, but we can be pretty rough with it. We don't have to be too exacting. Just make sure to not hit anything else and to stay within the lines of the scales. So I'll just come in here and get to work. So I will go through here and just finish painting all the scales. Probably get a bigger brush. I think this small brush is underkill for what we're doing here. That's much better. We'll go through and paint these up, and then we will be, I think, nope, we'll have a couple more colors that I almost forgot, and then it'll be time to add some washes and call him done. So I'll come back once I finish these scales, and we'll move on to highlighting the hair. Alright, we are back and our blue is done. Now, we're going to go on to Fire Dragon Bright, and we're going to highlight the hair with this. And we're just going to come up here with the relatively large brush, wipe the paint off our brush, and then just come in like this and just hit the tips. And we'll do the sides here. Should probably do it on camera though. That's key here. So again, just wipe the paint off the brush and you just come in like that. And we'll get the tips up here. Do the same thing. Didn't wipe the paint off enough. And just come in like this. And just get it all nice and highlighted. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the beard. Just a couple Highlights going in the direction of the braids here. And down here as well. There we go. And then we're going to go straight into the next color, which I think I have here, which is going to be Cadian Flesh Tone. There it is. And we're going to do this as a smaller highlight on the very tips of the hair. So right up here. Just going to grab that and go along the edges here. Just to give it a little more definition. Got a little too much on the side there, just wipe that off, no big deal. And then just do a little bit of it right at the edges of the braids here. There we go. And maybe a little bit up here. There we go. And a little bit more of the front. Okay. Alright. So that is him done, except for the washes. So I will set him aside, make sure he's completely dry. No wet paint lingering anywhere. And then we will come back and put the washes on. Alright, so the first wash we're going to apply is Null Oil. And we're going to do this on basically everything that isn't fire or hair. Or skin. So I'm just going to generously apply it to all this stuff here. Make sure to get it on all the bits of the torch sticking up into the fire. Going a nice definition there. And then get it down here. And all that. Put it on these anklets he has. On all this leather here. On the runes. All this metallic here. On the blue. All the way through here. And just making sure that you work it in. Really want to get it defining the lines between colors. Just come all the way down on the edge here. Just making sure it doesn't pool too heavily in any one spot. If it does, just grab it off and wipe your brush off a little bit. But that will be that. Well, I'll finish the Null Oil, obviously. I'm just going to show you, though, where I'm going to put the other one. The other one is Reichland Flesh Shade. And this is just going to go right on the hair. Just tie those highlights into each other and just give it a little more pop. And that will just about do it. Actually, I have one more color to do, but I need all this to be dry beforehand. So I will finish up the washes, and then we will come back and do that very last step. Alright, we're back, and everything is nice and dry. And the last thing we're going to do is take some Techless Blue and just give our cape a tiny little bit of highlight. I know I said I didn't want it distracting from the main attraction, which is the gold and the orange, but I think it does look just a little bit too boring. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this blue and just dot it right on the tips of these sharp scales running down the middle here. Nothing super fancy, but it does give a little more life to the cape, And I think I might even do it to these over here as well. Just come down and give them just a little dot right where the convergence of all the lines. There isn't really one over here, so I think I'll just leave it like that, to be honest. So, right about now, you should be seeing him with his base all done, and some pictures of that floating by. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully the video of the Thrall Master will be coming quick on the heels of this one. But yeah, otherwise, again, I hope you enjoyed it. YouTube tells me that I should ask you all to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I've never done that before, but I hear lots of other people doing it, and YouTube tells me I should do it because it helps. So there it is. I've asked. So if you want to do that, you can. Also, if you want to support the channel monetarily, beyond just watching the video, I do have a Patreon down in the description, but that is, as always, optional. Just watching the video with ads turned off or on does not matter. Everything helps. I appreciate it no matter what you're doing. But yeah, that'll do it for this dwarf, and I will see you on the next one.